Hi guys, I know it's usually better to make a video about ancient sites and hill forts and history of areas kind of outside in nature, maybe at the area, but it's kind of windy and rainy at the moment and I don't really have anyone to film for me. I don't really just want to put the camera on a tripod. I won't minded sort of doing it walking around sites and stuff, but I'll just do talk instead. So I wanted to sort of talk about our hill fort. I mean, quite a lot of groups, for ancient stones. I mean, quite a lot of groups for ancient sites, history groups, things like that. Ended up joining about 150 or 180 different groups. There were a lot of different groups. There were a lot of sort of groups into folklore, all things like that, and all the sort of Druid groups that Rollo Morgfling, he does the Stonehenge summer solstice. He's based down in Wiltshire. I think he's actually a news reporter actually as well. I didn't know that he used to be a news reporter. Down in the south of England, a lot of people are more enthusiastic and seem to be more interested in their local sites, in the sense of being curious about them and about what they used to be used for, activity on them, the people of the time, the prehistoric people or the Celtic people, and people go and look after those sites in a restoration type of attitude and sense. Like, the people who maintain the White Horse at Uffington Camp, where there's the Dragon Hill Fort, Uffington Camp, and they've got the Long Barrow Wayland Smithy in the woods. Those three sites are all in close proximity to each other. The horse on the side of the hills, and then the hill fort, and then the Long Barrow in the woods. And they've got volunteers who go up there with chalk, tools and buckets, and they maintain it every so often, and they're very sort of into the site. The history of the actual site itself, its original sort of creation. Now, the thing about our hill fort in the north of England, and we don't really have a lot of sites other than this, so it's not that, when you get the Seven Cotswold group, you always get Bellasnap, and then you've got, even Arthur Stone, which is over Herefordshire, and then you've got the one that was removed into the Cotswold Museum and rebuilt and restored, which I'm kind of not right happy about that. That's the one that appears in Indiana Jones. In Indiana Jones at the start, in the movie, I don't know if it's Raiders of the Lost, I think it's Raiders of the Lost Ark, when he's teaching the class, and he's showing them it on the wall. That's one of the Cotswold 7 group ones. And then there's Stoney Littleton, Long Barrow, West Kennet, the most famous one, the big one, that it's quite big to go inside. And then then you immediately have an interest in Avebury and Stonehenge, and all the other sites in that area then. Although, there are a lot in Scotland. Scotland again has got a lot of sites and a lot of cairns and Long Barrow structures, stone circles. Our hill fort seems to be, even though if you look at a map of England, it's very, very central in the island. It's quite central in the island, and the word island, it's island, island. And the thing with our hill fort is it being very, very, near central, and then it's also got a river that goes to the sea eventually, to Hull. And also, being on the hill fort is like being on a large boat, like a large ship, and what's the shape of the main structure of a boat? It's like a hull, things like this, it is also shaped like a big eye, shaped like a giant eye, or you could interpret it as a boat, either or. And a lot of these hill forts were slightly sloped for drainage, so, and also when a boat's on the sea, it tilts over, But we don't really have any long barrows near it, or any stone circles in West Yorkshire. Maybe there were some, maybe they got pulled down, at points in history. We don't know at this stage. But we know that, that hill fort, it's not a huge one like Maiden Castle, or Old Ossower Street is a bit bigger. It's a little bit smaller than those, but the thing with our hill fort for Yorkshire, the centre of England, is that it's in a very beautiful valley. when you look at the valley from certain angles, it's almost like, you know, it's very fitting to this Arthurian Camelot kind of sort of feeling, you know, particularly when there's mist in the valley. You know, we don't get as much mist as they have down Cornwall, but when there is mist, the whole shape of the valley and then on the side and the trees, it is very actual and magical, and that's why I've done a video recently to try and capture that, you know, and it's not finished yet. It's only sort of like early stages, but I've done like a test edit I'll put on that I want to show you, because I just want to kind of I want to try and get you thinking about this hill fort a bit more and understand that it's got political significance and that it's quite a politically significant historic place, and that affects you know, things like, you know, parties and status and symbolic meaning of different entities and groups who are, you know, running things, or, you know, who are sort of in charge, you know, whether it's, you know, the government or, you know, local groups or whatever. Now, the thing with this hill fort, the first thing that when you go there and think about it will become quite evident to you, is that it is like being on a large boat or a large ship, and if there wasn't the light, you see, there's a lot of light pollution now from Huddersfield. From the town of Huddersfield's grown big, so there's a lot of light pollution. There aren't many places in England you can go where there's no light pollution at all. They've got observatories, you know, in remote places. One of the famous observatories is up in Northumbria, where they do stargazing, you know, because it's very, you can't get photographs at Castle Hill that picture the stars as well. Some people successfully take photographs of stars over Stonehenge very well, but even though that's it's not near a big town or city, you know, there are smaller towns and cities near it, but people do like these you take 5 long exposure photos and you layer them up, you know. So you can actually take photographs of this hill fort, or on this hill fort, or beside it, without any light pollution now because of town. So the true stars, the true constellations above you, the natural ones, are actually all, you know, floodlit now, blocked out, you know. So you've got this false light, you know, shining from town. And I think that's quite upsetting and tragic in a way, really, because, you know, if you're on a ship under the stars, you know, it will, you know, and it must kind of, you know, conjure up the thought of starship, you know, it's a ship under the stars, a starship, you know, and we don't know for sure, but you can say that, you know, they might have done a lot of study of stars on there, you know, back in the day, when, you know, back in the prehistoric and Celtic times, when the stars were brighter, you know. And one thing, you know, we're so far from Wiltshire and from the Cotswold 7 group and the other hill forts, Oswestry and Maiden Castle, but it's not really that far. The island's not that big, really. You know, if you're using horses or walking, you can travel there, you know, in a few days. You know, it's not, you know. Now we usually only travel by, you know, by cars and, you know, coaches and, you know, planes and things like that. They've just walked up, some of Extinction Rebellion have just walked up to Scotland and walked down to London, you know, for that COP26 and for that other event. So, you know, I think that these sites are a lot more interconnected and a lot more important, and, you know, we see them as separate places. I don't think we envision them anymore as very internet woven sort of community and network of peoples, because if you're going to study travelling by stars for guidance, you know, and the sun as well, particularly, you're going to have to travel around. There's no point staying in one place. You want to stay in one place for long enough to know the stars and to study them and know where they are, but then to put that art to practice and see if it works, you've got to travel somewhere. Now, you won't just jump on a ship to sea, you know, and then start travelling by stars. You want to practice it on land first. So, you know, travelling from one hill fort, you know, to another to make sure you can get there right, you know, guided by, you know, the sun and the stars, you know, is one way to do it. And we're talking about, you know, before there was any, you know, signposts all around the country or villages as such, you know, not like now there is, you know, when you know, and when you asked people, you weren't necessarily sure whether they know exactly correct, because they, you know, they might be able to point you out to the nearest town, but if they've been in that local area, they might not, you know how to travel by those means, or they might not know where a further away place is. So you can ask people, but then you always need to double check. So, you know, to actually put it to use as you're learning it, and when you're learning it, you know, can you get down to Wiltshire, you know, and find these specific long barrows and places, you know, and you might have places on the way, other stone circles or other, you know, monoliths and things like that on the way, but he's putting it into practice. You use it, so, you know, you might be travelling up to Scotland, you know, so rather than, you know, these people up Scotland had these cairns and, you know, long barrows and things, and these people down south had, you know, if there were people who were learning, you know, orientation and geography and travelling by stars, astronomy, then it would be in practice, and you would be learning it, travelling across the land to use it. And then, you know, obviously once you were proficient at it, then you could go out, you know, further exploring actually on boats to the sea and use it and not get lost. So I think that the symbol of our hill fort, you know, for all that, you know, going to sea and even for stargazing. Now, in the modern times, people, you know, we know that, for example, the Cotswold 7 group and the Wiltshire sites have featured in films like Indiana Jones and the Lost Ark, you know, for example. Well, an ark's a ship as well, a boat, you know what I mean? So, with the Star Trek series, you know, with Captain Kirk, you know, many people are aware, you know, and have recognised or noticed, oh yeah, you know, it's Kirk Eaton and Kirk Burton, you know, like it's Captain Kirk's called Kirk and it's a starship, you know, and the hill fort does point towards, you know, Kirk Eaton. So, you know, the Americans are lending ideas from, you know, things in England, you know, because a lot of the Americans came over from England. It's their heritage and history as well, you know. It's quite important. And then obviously the more obvious recent one is that Patrick Stewart, Sir Patrick Stewart, who comes from, my mum used to go to school with him. She's got actually I'll show you it, but I'm not too sure where it is at the moment. I'll ask her when she gets back. She's got a photograph in the same photo as Sir Patrick Stewart when he was at school at Murfield. So, you know, he took over from Kirk, you know, from Bill Shatner, and he you know, he ended up being the main character in the movie. So, you know, and he's from Huddersfield. Well, it's Huddersfield, Murfield, you know, and so, you know, that I thought, but the thing is, it's ended up getting associated over time with the word enterprise, which is, now we're using enterprise for a business or franchise, right, which is like political parties have franchises. And I don't really think that's a good thing, because now I've made some other videos. I've put them on the Double Down News video, and I've also put them on the 50th Century Rebellion pages as well. We've got to a stage now where we're finding that business is taking over everything, and it's kind of like a bit of a loose cannon, really. It's kind of out of control, and it's just getting to destroy the environment and lots of other negative, you know, influences as well. Particularly with political party franchises, rely and depend on business and invest in business, like Nancy Pelosi in America has found to have been changing laws set on businesses. David Cameron, you know, Rees-Mogg, they've all got investments in business, enterprises, and if their party looks bad, the whole ship goes down, the whole party goes down. If Rees-Mogg or Boris prosecuted, convicted of something, you know, like proroguing Parliament unlawfully, they can't allow that to happen. So they end up not facing the consequences of their actions. They get away with it. Or else the whole enterprise suffers. That's a bad thing, because, you know, when the media are covering up for these political parties and enterprises, businesses that end up getting entwined in with them, like, you know, Care. Then you've got Keir Starmer appears in, you know, Parliament representing the, you know, the Labour, you know, and then you've got Balfour Beatty and all these other things, and then Boris is using them for their franchises' plans and strategies. You know, I've done the video talking about why it's a bad idea to have franchises. People from the local area who vote for a minister, representative in Parliament, should be first and foremost representing the local area. But we find that before they've even, you know, been voted in, they've already been groomed by their party, they're already affiliated with their party, the agendas with the party. And it's more of a front and a con, really, that they're representing the local people. I don't think they are. And then the fact that in every local area, then you've got the people split between, you know, Labour and Conservative, rich and poor, is not going to help the local constituency area get along with each other. It's always divided, you know. Whereas if you just have the one MP representing that area in Parliament, that area will be united as an area, no matter, you know, and everything, you will be getting everything to work in the area for all people in the area. So the area will be doing well. The area won't be divided, you know, and Coronation Street is meant to be for the working class, poor people, you know, in Greater Manchester. And then you've got other programmes, you know, that it's all social conditioning. Television is a main thing. I wanted to talk about Tolkien as well, because Tolkien, you know, when that there's a Victoria Tower on the Hill Fort. Now, we know there's a tower on Glastonbury Tor, but Glastonbury Tor wasn't so much a hill fort like Maiden Castle, Castle Hill and Old Oswestry Street. It's more of a hill with a decoration on it. You know, I'm not knocking it or anything, you know. But, you know, on Maiden Castle, you know, there have been things built in the past, but currently there's not anything on there. I can't imagine Dorchester Council wanting or letting someone to build something on Maiden Castle that represents some sort of franchise or business enterprise, because I don't think it'd go down very well with the archaeologists or the universities or the local people. You know, it is what it is. It's an ancient hill fort, prehistoric hill fort from a time, and it's quite rare, quite a large one, and needs to be preserved, or even to learn about it, you know, not forget it and build an enterprise on it for building donuts or something, you know, build a bakery on it. It's kind of a bit insulting, you know. So we've been having a lot of trouble recently with Castle Hill, with the Hill Fort, because Barry Sheeman, the MP, and the local political movement have wanted to put a cafe on it. Now, Sheeman himself, you know, I think he thinks it's a bit of a local compo, really, but that's only my opinion, you know, my own opinion of him. And in Home Firth, where they have the Last of the Summer Wine television show, we know that you know, the Sid's Cafe, you know, it got a cafe built next to it called Beatty's, which is like one-upmanship. It's Beatty's, it's for more posh people, you know. More posh people will go to Beatty's because it's better than Sid's Cafe. So it's ultimate like comping, Last in the Summer Wine and Compo, and having a bit of one-upmanship on them. And I kind of think that Sheeman always wanted to kind of have one-upmanship on that cafe, and even the word one-upmanship, by having the cafe on the hill, which I think, you know, it's kind of a bit insulting to the hill, really, you know. So I think it's a very bad idea to have that cafe on that hill. A really, really bad idea. This is my opinion, just because of what it symbolises. It's really like business and enterprise having total takeover. You know, these franchises, and in a time when, you know, we've got all these political groups, 6th Century Rebellion, Insulate Britain, all these groups are complaining about the environment, and then we've got animal activists and animal rights. Clearly, we've got a lot of diabetes problems in the country with health and eating. There are already restaurants all over the place. You know, you're struck to go for 100 metres in town without going cafe, or restaurant. So it's just not needed up there. And it's just kind of insulting the history of the site and the original purpose of the site, and it's kind of in a way forgetting about the site, you know. It's kind of like, you know, forgetting about it and kind of, you know, I don't think it's good, and the fact that there aren't any long barrows or stone circles in the immediate area, it's just that site, all that's left. It's even more of a precedence to look after it and protect it, you know. Maybe more so even than Oswestry or Maiden Castle, because they've got, even though they're bigger and more kind of spectacular when you're there, constructurally spectacular, but ours is in the valley itself is very beautiful, and a lot of those views aren't appreciated as much, and that's why I've been starting to make some videos so people can appreciate them more, you know. So there's a lot going on with this hill fort, historically and symbolically, particularly with that Victoria Tower that I started talking about, and then I moved on to talk about Barry Sheeman a little bit. The Victoria Tower, Tolkien was born in South Africa as a small child, around the time that that tower was built, you know, around that time. Now, Tolkien spent a lot of time around ancient sites, and he really liked Huffington Camp, and he really liked the White Horse and, you know, Wayland Smithy, Long Barrow. He was a big fan of these ancient sites, which comes through in his Hobbits and the, you know, the houses in the Hobbit little hills that are like the Long Barrows that in his stories, you know. And Mordor is a place where there's a lot of factory and industry and building, you know. It's all like that. So, you know, and when Tolkien died, around the time that he died, is when they built the Emblem Mast, which is the tall tower, you know. So, and he went to university in Leeds, and he had a friend at the Huddersfield University. So there's a lot of Tolkien's Lord of the Rings, like the cricket stumps with the eye on top of it, and, you know, the shape of the hill fort's like an eye, but he's got the tower on the eye, you know. And he wasn't a fan of industry, Tolkien, in his interviews with the BBC. So there are all those things, you know, political things about this hill fort. Figures, monuments and landmarks that are important to mention, you know. And it always seems to come down to kind of authority, really. It's almost like a chess piece, that tower being built on there to stamp and mark the authority on it, you know. Whether you're for that and you support that, or whether you're not. But what my main concern is, I kind of think that the study of the actual hill fort and the recognition of it in its past and the interest in its history and original use is kind of being lost now. And people, unfortunately, are more interested in football, the football stadium. People are more interested in just a cafe and eating, you know, burgers and food and chips. I think they don't have that down south. They've still got the interest and passion, like looking after the White Horse and things like that. Well, we've lost that now. They seem to have been lost to these enterprises and businesses and these TV and film programs, and it's all about, you know, actually going up into space and stuff like that. They're even more bothered about, you know, going into space and having holidays in space now with, you know, Bill Shatner going up there than actually looking after the hill fort and protecting it. You know, Bill Shatner is not trying to protect the hill fort. He probably wanted to go in the cafe on there and have a party, you know, but yet they've blocked off all the kids from going in there. They've put a barrier on there so the kids can't go in there and look at the stars at night and park up there. And look at the stars. They said it's too loud, but yet they want to have parties up there with all the celebrities and the famous people, you know, and eating on feast and food. You know, that's noise and more light pollution to it, you know. And I think it's a shame we've got the light pollution, you know. So there's a few things I wanted to mention about it, that hill fort, just to get people to think about why. I kind of think that the hill fort's been taken over by the enterprise. It's been hijacked, you know. It's been hijacked by the franchises, by the government enterprises, you know, and, you know, they want everyone singing Old Lang Syne. Old Lang Syne's an old famous song, but it's about getting drunk and forgetting everything. It's like Old Lang Syne's about, oh, you know, like, you know, forget everything and get drunk, you know, they want to forget the past, you know, forget as language and where words come from, origins of language and words. You know, like Tolkien was up there studying language. He came to Huddersfield, you know, and he did a forward in that book on the Huddersfield dialect. You know, he wrote forward in the book. He was interested in language and words come from, because that's what a lot of the Rings are. It's rich in language, and, you know, he did a lot of Anglo-Saxon history in it. So a few things I want you to think about. You know, I'm going to put this in the Rise Up North group, because the group's about the North and about, you know, everything about the North, political tie-ins and things like that about the North. So I kind of thought you'd be interested to think about it and why it's important, I think, to protect it as much as people in the south of England are protecting their Maiden Castle, and they're protecting, you know, their Old Oswestry Hill Fort and the Long Barrows and things like that. we got 3,000 signatures on the petition, and I thought that was a bit disappointing, really. I would have liked to get 19,000 and get a referendum on it or something like that. I'm actually trying to get the whole area protected as an area of outstanding natural beauty, because it qualifies for it, because it is a prehistoric site that's Grade 1 listed. So you can't get any more higher listing and protection than that, even though, it still might be greenbelt, but they're still trying to build on it. But it's next to the Pennine Hills. The Pennine Hills, and Uffington is next to a hill with a dragon on it, so the Pennines are a unique land feature in the country, a unique terrain. So I think we could get the area of outstanding beauty, even if town's not included in it, because it's a little bit overbuilt up. But what Armonbury and finally Tyres and Home Firth could get included in it. And I think it'd be worthwhile doing it. It'd be a nice thing to have, your local area as an area of outstanding natural beauty. And I think once people see those angles and views that are lesser known and haven't really been filmed very much from the air, from drones and things like that bring out, the nice angles of it, I think it'd be a worthy and nice thing to do. A lot better than just having a stupid cafe on there, because you can have a cafe next to it. Why does the cafe have to be on it? You can have a cafe. There's cafes in Armonbury. When you go to Bellsnap or wherever you go to Maiden Castle, you don't go to a cafe on the hill. You go to the hill to see the hill, and then you go to the cafe in Dorchester or wherever. So it's a bit of a shame, really. I'm a bit disappointed with Shearman and with a bit disappointed with Sir Patrick Stewart and Barry Shearman and Kirklees Council. Really, their entire vision, I think, is a bit defunct, and so like the enterprise, taking over as history, and it's a bad thing, really. It's really why Extinction Rebellion are kicking off, because all these industries and enterprises and factories are just pumping out too much rubbish and polluting the planet, so they should want to help, really, as well, so, okay. Hi. So I got a little bit rushed in the other video, because my parents come home and I was just finishing off, so I couldn't really finish the talk. So there's a few more things that I wanted to mention about Castle Hill in relation to that talk that I was doing earlier. So one of the main things, right, to do with that site, and they knew the importance of it, when we had the invasion with William the Conqueror in 1066, right? So in 1066, when William the Conqueror came over, we were still sort of in the Anglo-Saxon period, coming out of that whole bit of history. And when they started to take over gradually from the south to the north of the country, and they built the forts, they know it's not only strategic for fortresses and strongholds just for the sake of a position. There's got symbolism and meaning in it as well. They built a fortress at Old Sarum, which is not that far from Stonehenge, and that round hill fort, they dug the centre out of it, according to the archaeologists. They raised the centre up higher, so it was like a hill fort with a higher section in the middle raised up, almost like you could say like it's got a round table raised up in the middle of it. Don't know what significance that's got, you might have significance to you. But they actually kind of vandalised it in a way, and then they built an entire city in that hill fort. It's not even standing anymore, that city. They had a church in there, various other things in there, which those buildings aren't even there anymore, but the raised part in the middle is still there. To me, it makes me think of, a round table raised up a bit, but that hill fort wasn't like that originally, in the Celtic hill fort and in prehistory. It was just a circular shape, and it's one of the hill forts that's near Stonehenge and Avebury area, part of the country. So, and then as they moved north and they took places up here, they built a little mound at Merfield Castle, which I know very well, because I'm from Merfield, and I like that little Mott and Bailey Castle, the mound. It always reminded me of Avebury, the Silbury Hill and that, but it actually represents us being conquered and dominated.
And there are actually stories in the history book that say that, you know, the French weren't nice to us when they came over and took over. You know, there's some quite bad reports. It's around that time, you know, when those sheen and the gigs appear on the churches as well, you know, with the little golem-like creature with the vagina bit open at the bottom. And it's funny that it is the eye shape or the oval shape, like a rugby ball shape almost, that they have in those sheen and the gigs. It is like the shape of the Castle Hill fort in a way. It symbolises fertility, but it is from around that period, you know. And that's another symbol Tolkien used in Lord of the Rings for Gollum holding the ring, you know. But that sheen and the gig is not holding a ring, it's holding kind of like an oval shape, you know. It's meant to be the vagina held underneath, but so yeah. So Armembry, Castle Hill, when they built the Motte Bailey at Mirfield, they got a licence to fortify Armembry Hill Fort, and it was actually the oval shape before that. And what they did is they cut it up into sections, which is kind of vandalising it in a way. Did they need to build a fortress there? You know, was it really that busy there? Because when you look at the Doomsday Book and, you know, with the surveys of the villages and their assets, not only did they write their assets down to lower than they were worth when they went around and surveyed everything, say this farm was previously worth whatever, now it's only worth, you know, half of that or whatever. It makes out that there are hardly that many people even around the area. It's not well populated by how the Doomsday Book goes in the different villages and what mills they had and windmills and things like that. And it makes it hard to believe that they necessitated all this. So I think it's more of an authoritative statement to fortify and take, you know, the hill fort at Armembry and slice it up. It ruins the kind of eye shape of it and the ship shape of it. And it chops it up and kind of, you know, scrapes it really. It is a bit of a desiccation, you know, and doing the same to Old Sarum. And then obviously later on, it actually did turn into a medieval village. It was a medieval village at some point, but those scars from it are still there from when it got. So what happened to Castle Hill? It ended up being, instead of a symbol of, you know, astronomy and navigation and stargazing and learning and teaching, it becomes a symbol of authority and domination, you know, like we've taken over this country, we rule this country, now they've went into a fortress, you know. And I think that's one symbol what the French did when they came, when they even designed, when William the Conqueror went just before the invasion, they were building those mounds, you know. There are plenty of other ways you can fortify things, but it's symbolic of a mound with a tower on top of it, as if it has to plonk a tower on it, you know. And you know, Silbury Hill, you know, being next to West Kennet and all the barrows around England, you know, having those Motte Bailey Castle design is like, you know, well, your symbol, you know, is for barrows, and ours is now a barrow shaped design with some clunked on it. And that's what they've done to, you know, ultimately what they've done to Old Sarum and what they did to, you know, Armembry Hill Fort as well. So I think it's quite symbolic. And then banging the Victoria Tower on, they actually opposed that Victoria Tower at Huddersfield when it was built, you know, for Queen Victoria's Jubilee. There was a lot of people opposed to it. They didn't just do it straight away. There was quite a bit of a debate about it, you know. So it is almost like moving your chess piece onto somewhere, your castle, to take another piece, really. So, and I think it's important to talk about that in the Rise Up North group, because this group's all about political things and social justice, and it's about the north of England. So I thought it was really important, you know, to discuss things like that, which to the government, I mean, even Coronation Street, you know, Greater Manchester, but you've got a queen, which is, you know, not the chest of a man, but the chest of a woman that's greater, you know, when we've got a fortress dominating the place. Even when Queen Elizabeth comes in, it's very shortly after when Coronation Street gets invented, you know, and then we've got everyone watching it, you know. So, I mean, so even the programme Coronation Street is very symbolic, you know. You've got, you know, the Labour Party, the workers. You've got a programme that pops up for the coronation, symbolic of the coronation, and street is like almost like, you know, street going up the country, like, you know, the Roman road or whatever, and coronation, and it's all about working class, and it focuses on emotions and, jealousies and social. It is actually quite an important program for social injustice, really, And in a way, I think Coronation Street has been used to control the working class and sway their opinions, maybe even to divide people, because without the franchises that we were talking about before, without these political franchises, get your vote for the upper class party or the lower class party, if it was just the MP elected in by the local people, the best MP that they want to elect, and he represents the local people, and he's not affiliated with the franchise or any enterprises or anything, just purely the local people come first, whoever they are, then, you're getting represented honestly, and there's no ties or any affiliations, to those people before there's ministers before you vote for them. So when you have a Labour and a Tory, it kind of always divides people, and it has, instead of people in the county all being together and united and getting represented equally and fairly, it's like some lost the election, some won, and they're divided, and you've got the winners, running the government, and all the people in the local area losers. So in every area you've got heads and tails, you've got winners and losers with this franchise form of government, whereas if everyone just elects the person that they want, who's going to wholly and completely represent the people of that area, whichever person they elected, but they're not tied to any franchises or anything other than the local people, then there aren't any winners or losers in a sense. Supposedly they voted the best person for the job in, but he's not, you haven't really voted for a franchise and enterprise that is something else other than the local area. It's something not even in the local area that seems to be, once you vote for it, then it comes and takes over your local area and takes precedence over it. And then not only that, it's got the people in the local area divided and arguing against each other. And with that strategy, you actually end up having people not united across the country. You have people kind of arguing, and now like things like building new houses, you can't object to it, and people don't want to sit down and discuss it. The Tories don't even want to sit down and discuss things now. They say, right, I've got the money, I'm buying that, I'm building that, tough. And then they're literally doing it, making it so they can just do what they want. It's not about love, sharing, understanding and care and getting to know each other properly. It's all about, this guy's a weirdo, that guy's a criminal, we're going to punish him, we're going to stop him from doing this, we're going to build blocks around schools, we're going to have websites and Facebook where there's buttons, block, ban, ignore. How's that going to make your area grow and plan and design it so everyone's happy? Let's keep this, that, these things we like to keep and preserve, those things we're not too bothered about. Make sure we decide for the area, not Boris in London saying, right, we've won and our enterprise is now just going to do what we want, and tough, no matter what county you're in, tough. And I'm not really a great fan of Tracy Brabin either, because she's a Coronation Street character, and it's all about, they did that campaign on YouTube, just before the election, the last minute, and everyone ended up voting for her because she popped up on the YouTube ads, and then she was giving out free cakes and buns and stuff like that. It's all enterprise, it's not proper politics, it's all like acting and television and kind of like bribery, So I think, the symbols of television programs and then sites, it's all symbolic, and when they want to win, they want to make an impression and make a statement with it. This is why they've got Bill Shatner had to go up. It had to be Bill Shatner. He has to go into space before he dies, because he were the actor in the space program, and he's got to go up into space. It's all kind of like choreographed, and it's I find it kind of insulting that Bill Shatner, he's got this program with, the Starship Enterprise and, this Kirk Heaton and all these other titans, when that's the last thing on his mind. The first thing Shatner wants to do is get up into space in a space rocket and look down on us all, and that's symbolic to Jeff Bezos and the empire and all the big businesses, that they're sort of like priority and they're winning, not people in counties coming to understandings and spreading love and kindness. If you put a model into Amazon for starting to love and care and share, Bezos loses money, and I just can't see that, you know, that it's the future of the planet for enterprises, you know. Keep politics and business separate so that business hasn't taken over politics. Because otherwise you haven't got any politics, you've got bosses and workers, you've got chief executives, you know, I own this company, you don't, that's what you get. If you have people like Nancy Pelosi, David Cameron, if you want to be a businessman, be a businessman, that's your career, you want to make money. If you want to be a politician, then be a politician, get into being elected in and making decisions for local people in the country, not with business ties and for government contractors and businesses like Care and Balfour Beatty, you know, who are cheating rules and regulations and getting protected from it, and, you know, courts and CPS. And then once ministers start making mistakes and breaking the law, they can't. They don't want to be eligible for prosecution, or they don't even want to be considered because nobody will vote for the entire party. It's almost like a protection in a way. It's like the mafia. It's like a mafia protection, you know. It's like gangland bosses. And then when you start opposing them, things in your area start, you know, going wrong. Oh, the airplane flight paths have been changed and going over my house now. And, oh, you know, my favourite park down the road's been ruined, and then now I can't go on the buses because they've started putting those talking, irritating ones on, take my driving licence off me. It's almost like, and then, you know, then you start, you know, trying to say something about it, and then you get, you know, news programmes and TV programmes, you know, kind of putting puns in and stuff like that, like winding up Extinction Rebellion, Insulate Britain, and you start being targeted, and it's kind of like you're being sort of like attacked and walled in, but yet on TV they're pretending, oh yeah, you know, you're popular, we're actually helping each other to love each other. Yeah, if we sit down and watch the TV show, if we all ring in, if we all ring up Capital Radio, Capital for the cash, if we chase the money, if we give all our money over to the government, give it all over to the National Lottery to decide what to do with the money, they're more responsible to look after it. Gordon, give all the gold to the government, all the money, and then Gordon Brown will sell it off, and then it'll end up in the Tories, and they'll use it to sponsor their party and their franchise, which is not for people. It's just for one side, one party. You know, it's theft. You know, it is theft and being fleeced, and people like David Cameron should face criminal proceedings. They should be prosecuted for it. So should Nancy Pelosi. You know, they become corrupt. And this is why we've got rights to oppose them, and why judges who are affiliated with those franchises, members of those political parties, cannot use the law, criminal procedures, to punish us, stop us, or deviate the campaigns. Because if you have to pay for legal proceedings, then you haven't got any money to complete the campaign. When you put in evidence to Parliament and bringing a case to Parliament, it's a case with the jurisdiction of Parliament, and it's every act of law, it's provided for it in the Human Rights Act, Section 6 and 7. It sets out the framework for when you're doing something in connection with Parliament. It's a separate jurisdiction from the public authorities. It is parliamentary. And we've got access to that through the right to petition, even if there isn't a Parliament. You know, even if there isn't a Parliament, you've still got the right, with the protection, to do it. You know, so with all what I've said, you know, even David Cameron, you know, when he was flashing around that Conqueror paper, it's symbolic. You know, it's a statement. You know, it's like, you know, when they wear certain fashion things, you know, making a statement. See, when Cameron's using Conqueror paper and you're writing a complaint to Parliament and he sends you a reply and just, you know, goes like that, you know, get lost, whatever. With Conqueror paper, you've been conquered. He's wanting to put it on paper, you know, I'm conquering you, you know. And even the word franchise, it's like franchise, you know, and that really kind of, when you think of William the Conqueror coming over and taking control of all the hill forts, and they're French, and then particularly taking, you know, Castle Hill, which is the ship shape or the eye shape, however you want to see it, Fernley Tires, you know, it's almost like, you know, the French come and take it, the franchise takes over, you know, so. And part of what led into the Civil War, if you read Peter Ackroyd, OBE's books, is the shipping tax. they made a big deal out of this shipping tax. Oh, we're going to tax you all to do the ships. Again, the hill fort, the big ship, the hill fort, you know, rather than it being a symbol of power, then, you know, well, you know, the king's like, well, you know, we're going to have anything to do with, you know, shipping now is going to be taxed, shipping tax. And this shipping tax, you know, it's the power and the authority, you know, to do with ships, and you're going to get, they're going to be charged with it, and all the power's money's going to go to the king, and that's eventually that with the Duke of Buckingham and all that. If you read into it, it goes into the Civil War eventually. Do you know what I mean? So it's important, and you need to know that rather than just, you know, going for ice creams at Castle Hill and, you know, Barry Shearman's not kicking around ideas for cafes and all this. It's all symbolic, and, you know, the football team aren't going to help us, I don't think, because, you know, they're more interested. They care more about the football stadium than anything else, you know, and it's down to the people. I'd like to protect that site, because the people down south are protecting the sites and caring about them with the Uffington White Horse. You know, people are going there and taking care of it, maintaining it, you know, and same with Maiden Castle and the other sites. And I think it's a shame that, you know, the best thing we can come up with is ice cream and cafe. It's almost like a Benny Hill sketch. It's almost like David Hockney painting, you know, with Compo and Barry Shearman and Kirklees Council. The best thing they can come out with are these, you know, cafes where Sir Patrick Stewart and Barry Shearman can go up there and have fancy wine and get drunk with all the light pollution. And, you know, it's almost like this fake artificial light of town and celebrities is blanking out the true stars. That if there weren't all this light pollution, we'd be so much a beautiful area. Do you know what I mean? That's why I wanted to make that video, you know. Hopefully you understand what I mean, you know. So it's kind of like, I get upset that there's all these groups, you know, all these ancient stones, you know, prehistory guys, and you know, the Standing with Stones video, and then you've got, you know, universities and archaeologists and people like that, and, you know, there just seems so little interest in West Yorkshire and our site, other than, you know, just, you know, they put barrier up, block all the kids from going up there and parking up there at night, but yet they want to allow the elite, the celebrities, the franchise, the people with the money up there and a fancy cafe with a hotel for overnight. You know, it's always Kirk. It's all Kirk and Shatner and Patrick Stewart. And when you're young, you kind of like look up to these role models like, you know, Shatner. You know, he's a hero, but you realise when you get older, when things like this happen, that he's just an actor. You know, he smokes too many cigars, he drinks too much whiskey, and, you know, he's not exactly the best model of fitness. And these people are usually out for themselves in life. They're not out to look after areas and protect sites. You know, it's all about the career and profit and money, and more power to Jeff Bezos and Amazon, you know, and Tracy Brabin. You know, it's not electing people who aren't affiliated with franchises and enterprises and taking over our democracy. You know, to David Cameron and his pals and Gordon Brown fleecing us. We're no better off with heads or tails when it's Labour or Conservative, because it's, you know, Labour fulfil the perfect side of the coin, tails, and the Tories fulfil the perfect side, heads. And whether you land heads or tails, you lose, because, you know, Labour doesn't represent anything other than providing what the enterprise needs for it to be successful, which is, you know, they're wanting to provide the workers to do what they want, and if they're lucky, they'll get a little bit more money, and if they're unlucky, they'll get a bit less money, you know. And all these trade union things are a distraction. I don't know what Ken Loach is going on about with trade unions. More trade, more enterprise, more commerce, surprise, you know. So I know this kind of ties into the other talks that I've done before, but I wanted to bring the site into it because it's important, and it's got meaning and symbolism, and, you know, I think that, you know, I'd like to see people with more interest than just pottering up there flying kites, pottering up there with ice creams, pottering up there, you know, just to fly drones around. You know, like, in Wiltshire and places like that, they're just so much more interested in caring. The only thing that they seem to be interested about in our area is football stadium, you know what I mean? And people, there is a group for Castle that I'm in, and there's some cool people in there, but they just take photos of it, and all they do think it's there just to photograph and take photos of. It's not like people are on there discussing. It's called Castle Hill. There's not one post there about people talking about the history on there, people having discussions about, you know, what it was used for, and its ties to like Sisbury Ring Hill Fort. If you watch a good video by James Sainsbury of the Wiltshire, it's the South Downs National Park, talking about supplying flint from that hill fort, digging in flint from that hill fort. They lived there and worked there and provided flint to the whole of the country through the trade routes, you know, up to our hill fort, which is not unlike a flint shape as well. And we've even got one of the council offices on Flint Street as well. So, you know, that's another symbolism. The Celts had images, what were multiple images. It was convenient for it to be artistic, that it had 2 or 3 meanings, and that was a good thing, because this is when you get into all the Welsh culture and the poetry, and when the Welsh were learning language and religion, they wrote things backwards, so other words were written into it, and it was poetic, and it had, you know, multifaceted and things like that. You know, that's what heritage is about, you know, and I kind of get a bit upset that it ends up turning into a David Hockney photograph or some sort of episode of Lassie in the Summer Wine. Not that I don't like Lassie in the Summer Wine, but liking it for the right reasons and the wrong reasons, you know, almost as if, you know, Coronation Street, the woman's chest kind of beats compose feeble attempts, and he gets bested by beaties, and, you know, and all that. It's kind of like, you know, it's kind of a bit sad, you know. Everyone's addicted to Quality Street chocolates and all this and that. I just think it's a bit, and the whole Tracy Brabin image of it, really. I don't know how they've got people voting for it. There was only 30-40% turnout for local elections, right? 30-40% turnout in the local elections. And all the ones who, I would bet money that if you look at who voted for Labour and what percentage of people voted for Labour, which is only like, what, half of a third or something like that, 1/6. I wouldn't be surprised if all those people who are actually, I haven't even watched Coronation Street, probably all of them, that is probably the audience of Coronation Street who voted for Tracy Brabin. I won't be surprised. I'm not saying I'm right or wrong, but I've got a hunch that you'll find the figures are there. And then it's how the minds, psychology works of the whole TV stations, you know. I think it's pretty miserable, really, you know. I think the whole country and the future of the human race is kind of like should have more interest to it. Then they've got the National Lottery with these young kids going, oh, let's go on holiday to Bora Bora and go eat at Nando's. That's all. The whole thing with the franchise and the enterprise, all they want is they don't want young kids to be going parking up places at night and having fun, sat in a car listening to music. They want Patrick Stewart and Barry Sheeran up in the cafe, drinking expensive wine and eating expensive meals, making noise. Then, you know, they won't be taking complaints from public. They'll give them a big pair of odds then if public complain that they're making too much noise. But the kids get booted off at night, you know. Then, you know, spreading all rumours that, oh, no, there's dodgy stuff going on up there, when, you know, there's probably dodgy stuff going on in a row of terrace houses and neighbours, but, you know, they don't, you know, kick them all out, you know. It's just kind of like, I don't really know what Kirklees Council are playing at. I don't think Kirklees Council are a very good council compared to some of these councils down the south of England, like in Wiltshire and Bristol. They're just so much more inspiring and creative and modern way of thinking, but respecting and preserving the history and heritage, you know, not kind of writing it off in a sense. I know this discussion covers a lot of topics, but it's meant to be about the North, so it is about an important historic thing we've got in the North, so I kind of hope that you find it interesting, you know, and want to think about it a bit and maybe think about helping out, because I think it would be cool to get an area of natural beauty made, because, you know, people only usually think of Northumbria and, you know, Cumbria and places like that of beautiful areas, but there's a certain area of all of it that's still preserved and it's still beautiful, and I think that it should get protected to stop these savvy councils and these savvy celebrities kind of like taking over the place, you know, and boosting themselves off into the stratosphere with a pair of odds, you know, and giving us a pair of odds, and you know, then all the kids have got nothing to do, no interest, and then the last resort they've got is to pay Richard Branson to take them on holiday to Bora Bora or whatever, and you know, go eat at Nando's. It's pretty tragic and sad, really, I think. But you know, okay.